Ah, yes, it's that time of year again. You know the time, our yearly roundup of our favorite products of the year, favorite headphones and audio related stuff of 2022. That's what we're going to talk about in this video. Now, here's the thing. Headphones and audio-related stuff don't necessarily progress in the same way that other types of technology do. And while there are new things that come out that can be better, there are still amazing products that, have existed for several years, sometimes quite a while. A Sennheiser HD600 doesn't get worse just because, the years go by. It's still a great headphone. So if you're looking for opinions on the best headphones as of right now in 2022, that's what our ranking lists and buying guides are for, a ranking list based on, what we've heard and what we've experienced. And some of that, we are going to talk about it. We are going to mention it. But I wanted to make this video a little bit different. I wanted to make it more about what the awesome things were that we experienced. And the task that I've put in front of the team has been to indicate 3 products, whether it's at the budget segment, the mid-level, the high-end, or the truly ridiculous, that were things that were sort of the standouts of the year. And then we also had a lot of transformative experiences this year, going on trips, going to meetups, highlights of the year. And we're going to start with the man himself, Mr. DMS. Let's go.
The best things for me in 2022 actually start off with a piece of software. On the cheaper end, it's $99 for Sound ID reference for headphones only. It's a piece of software that has a large database of headphones, like, for example, this Beyerdynamic DT700 Pro X. You select your headphone, it basically auto-calibrates the headphone to their neutral target, but the cool thing is then you can go from there and add your own EQ modifications to it or simulate other sources like different sets of speakers or headphones or targets. I find it super useful for work, and it also makes it so if you have a headphone and you want to try it to be neutral and then customize that to your preferences, well, you have the option to. You can do that for free with a lot of work, but for $100, I think it is absolutely worth the price. The next thing on my list is actually this. Meze 109 Pro. This was an absolute show stealer at Munich. I thought it was a really cool headphone, definitely my favorite thing out of Meze's lineup, and it stands out as something truly unique right now in the headphone world. It's extremely comfortable, it has an airy tuning, and altogether it just stands out at its price point. And lastly, while I don't have this one on hand, the ZMF Caldera and honorary mention Atrium. It was a tough choice between the two, but I heard the ZMF Caldera at CanJam SoCal and thought it was a mind-blowing planar. It had the timbre of a ZMF that you would expect from things like Atrium or Aeolus, but with the technical capability in the detail of a planar. That was a truly special headphone. I can't wait to get my hands on one here. My transformative experience. Well, I definitely have had a number of transformative experiences this year, in many interesting places in the world at that, but the one that stands out I think the most was getting to hear Jonathan Morrison's 12-channel Genelec Atmos system. That was really cool, and it honestly changed a lot of my perspective about speakers and what an Atmos system was actually capable of. The runner-up to that for transformative experience definitely being Munich. That was an incredible trip with the Headphone Show team. And there you have it. That's my best of 2022.
We spend a lot of time talking about the sound quality of products like headphones, DACs, and amps, but the experience of listening to music isn't just about sound quality, and that's where my first choice comes in. Roon, to put it simply, just makes the experience of listening to music nicer. It's a player that seamlessly blends your local library with online libraries from Tidal, Qobuz, and Dropbox. It has a really comprehensive DSP suite which allows you to apply EQ, crossfeed, upsampling, room correction. It's even got stuff like the Audeze Reveal presets built in. It's a butler for your music. Automatic tagging of all your files. Want to set up network streamers or a multi-room system, even integrate Sonos, just finds it all, no problem. HQ player support built in. Want to use your TV as a wireless display companion for your speaker system, easy. It just makes everything so simple. But the killer feature for me is Roon Radio, Roon's recommendation algorithm. You simply pick a track that you're in the mood for at that time, and then it plays on from there with recommended tracks that for me have been way better than any other service I've tried. I've found so much good music with this that I'm honestly not sure what I'd do without it. The second product that I'm choosing is a little bit different. Are you interested in measurements of audio devices? Do you want to try taking some yourself? Do you have nearly $40,000 to spend on an apx555? No? Well, maybe that's not a problem. This is the E1DA Cosmos analog to digital converter. It's around $200, and it's so good that this allows you to take measurements of audio devices with a level of accuracy approaching that of the apx555. In combination with freely available software like Room EQ Wizard, there's a lot you can do with this, and there's drawbacks to it. I'm not going to be selling my apx555 anytime soon, but I'm really happy that this exists. And for anyone wanting to experiment with taking measurements of audio devices themselves, I'd strongly recommend looking into it. After all, the more sources we have available for objective data, the better. And this makes the barrier to entry way more accessible. And lastly, for my favorite high-end product in 2022, I have to go with what is probably the best sounding headphone amplifier I've ever heard, the Zale HM1. It's an amplifier built by Michael Zale, who's well known for his mixing desks used by artists like The Chemical Brothers, Aphex Twin, and Nils Frahm, and it's stunning. Massively powerful, multiple inputs which can either be switched between or mixed together, built-in analog EQ, full Class A with the option to run either with or without negative feedback depending on preference, and my absolute favorite feature, the stereo bass adjustment, or what I prefer to call the soundstage knob. This is not crossfeed, which is a feature you've probably seen on plenty of other audio products before. This is an analog domain mid-side comparator. What it does is it looks at what content of the left and right channel is similar versus different, and only adjusts the amplitude of the differences. So rather than like crossfeed, where it does make things sort of bigger but also moves everything out in front of you, when you turn this knob, it just makes the soundstage either smaller or bigger. That's it. In terms of this year's transformative experience, Munich High End was undoubtedly the best in terms of crazy audio gear. But if we go by percentage of time spent smiling, CanJam SoCal absolutely takes the cake and was a phenomenal example of just how wonderful this community can be. Instead of staying in the hotel, myself and about a dozen audiophile friends got together and rented a couple houses in Newport Beach for the week, with some of us coming from, well, England, Alaska, Texas. It was fantastic. We did things like hiking up to the Hollywood sign, there was a road trip down to San Diego, we went to see Kendrick Lamar and the Big Steppers tour, and on the Saturday night we hosted a private meetup with some wonderful people, crazy gear, and the best tacos that I've ever had. It was awesome, and I so can't wait for next year. If you're considering going to any of the CanJams this year, just do it.
Okay, so my favorite headphones as of the end of 2022. So this is gonna sound a little repetitive, and it probably won't be very surprising, but honestly, rediscovering the DT770 Pro from Biodynamic has been great for me. It was actually one of my first audiophile grade headphones, and I just feel like for $150, you're getting a really good close back. And I find that this original DT dynamic driver that Biodynamic have, I feel like has a very good staging capabilities, super solid imaging, not the most impressive instrument separation, and it's also pretty punchy and dynamic, has a good slam to it. Now, the only thing is that, of course, it's a little bit V-shaped, so it can be a little spicy in the treble and occasionally a bit boomy in the bass. But if you EQ like me, I feel like this is a really well-rounded headphone in this price range. And I actually find that it competes with slightly more expensive headphones like the HC600 or the Sundara. Now, another headphone that's actually really surprised me this year was the 109 Pro from Meze. So if you've watched some of my, or read some of my reviews of Meze headphones, you know that I've found their tuning to be a little bit wonky at times, but that wasn't the case with the 109 Pro, and I think that this is by far their best tuned headphone. For me, under $1,000, I can't think of another headphone that I'd choose if I was upgrading from something like the HC600, because they have that sort of dynamic driver sound and presentation. Their tuning is a little bit on the brighter side, particularly because other Meze headphones, they have a very energetic upper treble. Other than that, it's a headphone that I really love. And then, well, I finally got to try the Hyperman Sundara. Now, of course, this headphone is prohibitively expensive, but the level of performance you get, I think of this one recording every time because it was the first thing I listened to on them. It was Para Que Sufrir by Natalia Lafourcade with Jorge Drexler, and it was the instrumental version, which is the two of them and playing guitar. You feel like you're in the studio because this headphone's level of detail retrieval, the resolve it has to it is just so nuanced. It just creates such a pristine image of the music, and it's just very lively. That's just still the most impressive headphone I've heard thus far. Now, if I had to think of a transformative or very standout experience in audio for me this year, it would have been that I tried tube amps, because
I was always very skeptical about like Source equipment making a like a very, very major or impactful change. But that was really only in the world of solid state, and I know that some people are really not gonna like that comment. But then I tried the Felix Audio Euphoria and the Amps and Sound and Headphones.com Forge, and that for me was the first time I heard like a really major significant change in like my headphone sound and performance based on changing the source equipment. So I actually made a video about like sharing my experience with like 2M, so if you're interested in that, there will be a link to that in the description down below. But other than that, yeah, those are my favorite headphones for 2022, and also just sort of what my experience has been so far.
Hey everyone, Precog here. Jumping right into this, I think that my first product of the year was surprisingly not an IM. I think that there were a lot of budget tier IMs this year. There were a dime a dozen that were very good, but they just didn't stand out to me. So what really stood out to me this year though was the Qdelix 5K. I've had my doubts about these Bluetooth DAC amps in the past, but this is the one that really shifted my stance on them. The Qdelix 5K's PEQ implementation is simply a game changer for a lot of listeners that are using iPhones, and just iOS in general. If you're not aware, iOS does not support PEQ. So really useful little tool for me. I've also found myself using it quite a bit just around the house in general, when I'm taking the dog out, and anywhere honestly where it's more convenient to use something that's hands-free. Moving up the ladder, my next two picks are going to be a bit more obscure, but I do think that they deserve a spotlight on them for what they are. This one here is an IM that I don't think many people will have heard of. It's called the 7th Acoustic Supernova 6 balanceometer setup that clocks in at roughly $750 USD. It's made by a very small brand in Indonesia. Very, very small brand. Like, they're very unknown. They don't even associate with the international market most of the time, but they're doing some very special stuff in terms of the tech that they're packing into their IMs. And the Supernova is really the shining example of it, if you will. Just one look at the frequency response graph and you can tell that it is something special. Just zero peaks, zero dips in the frequency response, and it's just a very seamless listen overall. Some of the best tonality that I've heard in an IM to date. The technicalities, they're not incredibly good, but they're up there as well for $750. I should disclose that I only got my ears on the Supernova in the last couple of weeks, so I haven't had the time yet to do a full review, but do be on the lookout for that. Okay, and the final product for me this year is going to be the Elysian Diva IM. This IM is an IM that I heard at CanJam Singapore, and it absolutely blew me away, enough to the point of which I decided to buy it basically on the spot. The really unique thing I think about the Diva is that it has an adjustable bass pot in the back. So you have 3 distinct settings, and I should expand a little bit more on this. This is a 6 balanceometer setup again. That is, I want to say it's $1,500 USD, and you do have the option of a custom for another $100 or so. Very, very cool IM. I don't know if I would 100% recommend it just because the wait time for it is absolutely insane. But from the perspective of sound quality, this is an awesome IM, and it's been in my ears pretty much constantly since I've gotten it. I personally got it in the CIM form, so it's very convenient, very comfortable. It's just a pleasure to use in general. For my transformative experience this year in audio, it would definitely have to be my trip to CanJam Singapore and just getting to visit Singapore in general. For this, I do have to give another shout out to Headphones.com for sponsoring pretty much the entirety of the trip. The atmosphere of Singapore was insane outside of the heat. Everyone was very welcoming. I got to try so much good food, and of course I got to get my ears on a lot of stuff that I wouldn't otherwise be able to get my ears on in the United States. Okay, and I think that about wraps up my contribution to this Best of 2022 video, and I will see you guys in the next one.
My first pick in the more budget segment, it's not really budget, but budget-ish, is going to be, surprisingly, the Apple AirPods Pro 2. That is a product that kind of took me by surprise by how good it is, both from a feature set and convenience set, and also the thing that kind of speaks to the audiophile in me. Now, that might surprise you guys because it's not really an audiophile-centric device. It's very consumer oriented. It's probably the most popular thing in the world for audio stuff. But here's the thing, it also sounds really freaking good. And while I think you can probably get better sound quality for the money with wired IEMs or even at lower price tag, that's certainly true, it's still something where you can kind of see the consumer market get better. Because in a way, it's kind of like the introduction to great sound, or good sound at least, to a much broader audience. And I think that's awesome. Maybe it's a way for more people to kind of catch the audio sound quality bug like I have. My second pick is the Hi-Fi Man Edition XS at around $500. While it's not perfect, there are still some quirks there, like for example in the upper treble, and also the headband. If you have a smaller head, maybe it doesn't quite work all that well. For me, it is still kind of like the benchmark headphone at around $500 for the open back headphones, especially the way that I tend to use these. I love to EQ headphones, if you guys don't know that already. I love to dial it in just how I like it. I'm not saying you have to do that, but for me, that really works. And the Hi-Fi Man Edition XS is a great platform. It's one of the best kind of starting points for that because it has a solid tuning to begin with. It's got really great bass extension, and I don't have to do all that much when it comes to my adjustments. And then for the high end, the truly ridiculous stuff, this year there was a headphone system that took me by surprise by how good it was. Two systems, actually. One was the Warwick Acoustic Supernova. That is still the best sounding thing that I heard this year, and that is truly insane for the price tag. But I'm also going to give the nod to the Warwick Acoustics Bravura, the one that is a little bit closer, in proximity to the Susvara here as far as, attainability. And while I don't think it beats the Susvara outright, I think it trades blows in a number of areas. And so for me, the Bravura system is one of the standout products of the year. So it's definitely high up on my ranking list as well there. Now, as far as my transformative experience goes, we went on that crazy trip to Munich High End, which was awesome. Then we went to CanJam SoCal. But for me, I think the coolest experience was getting a chance to go through the factory over at Focal, where they showed me how they make the drivers for the Focal Batiste wireless headphone. And it's basically their attempt at making a truly audiophile grade, audiophile level sounding wireless noise canceling headphone. So it's really cool to see them kind of enter this arena, but then, going there and seeing the transducers being made. I mean, this is like the nerdiest side of things, but like it's the most fascinating part to me, is getting to see how transducers are made, how drivers, the things that make sound are made, and what goes into it. So that was fascinating to me. And while that was probably at the top of the list for me, this year was truly crazy for how many amazing experiences we got to have. And because of that, I'm looking forward to next year for all the crazy stuff that I'm sure we're going to get up to. Anyways, that's going to do it for this video. Thanks for taking the time to watch it, and we will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.